During our anniversary dinner, my mother-in-law laughed and said, "That's cute. How hard you work on that pay." My daughter could have married Nathan, the millionaire. Everyone laughed. I put down my fork, looked at my wife, and said 4 words that made her mom drop her wine glass. Her words were a direct hit. "It's cute how you try so hard on that salary." My daughter could have married Adam, the millionaire. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, laughed, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. What I said next wasn't just a comeback. It was the first shot in a war that would reshape my entire life. The soft hum of conversation had filled the upscale Italian restaurant in Newport just moments before. Candles flickered, casting a warm glow over our anniversary dinner. We were celebrating 5 years of marriage, a milestone I genuinely cherished. But when Eleanor delivered that line, her eyes glittering with a condescending amusement, the air around our table suddenly turned brittle. It felt like every pair of eyes in the room was on us, even though logically they couldn't have heard. I watched her perfectly manicured hand lift her wine glass, a smirk playing on her lips, and for the first time in years, I didn't try to swallow down the bitter taste of her disdain. For most of my life, I've always chosen peace. I grew up in a family where conflict was resolved with quiet glances and unspoken tensions, not loud arguments. So, when I married Chloe and entered her family, a family that seemed to thrive on drama, I genuinely thought keeping my head down was the mature thing to do. I'm Liam, 33, and I used to believe enduring snide remarks was a kind of quiet strength. But what they don't tell you is there's a thin line between keeping the peace and letting people walk all over you. I hadn't even realized I'd crossed it until that very second. Let me rewind a bit. I met Chloe when I was 26. We both worked at a tech startup in Austin. She had this laugh, the kind that just carries across a room and instantly brightens everything. We clicked fast. Movie nights turned into sleepovers, sleepovers into shared furniture. Soon, we were building IKEA desks in our first tiny apartment. I loved her, still do. But loving someone doesn't mean their family will automatically love you back. Chloe's family, well, they were from a different planet. Her mother, Eleanor, is the type of woman who wears heels in her own house and treats every gathering like a photo shoot. Her hair has never once looked undone, her opinion is always the loudest, and she acts like she's perpetually auditioning for a role as a rich lady who owns a vineyard. Then there's her dad, Arthur. Quiet, balding, always checking his watch like he's counting down to the Golf Channel. He's not cruel, just absent. A ghost at most family events. Chloe says he's always been like that, disengaged, a man who lost all his fights sometime around the birth of their second daughter. And finally, Sarah, Chloe's older sister. If Eleanor is the queen bee, Sarah is her loyal drone. She married Daniel, a lawyer who wears loafers with no socks and talks like he's on a TED Talk stage. They have a baby named Milo, who is, according to Eleanor, the future of humanity. You never heard the end of it. Now, I don't come from money. My parents are a public school teacher and a mechanic. We watched every penny growing up. When I proposed to Chloe, it was with a modest ring I paid off over 5 months. She said yes, with tears in her eyes. I knew she didn't care about money, but I also knew her family would. The first time I met Eleanor, she looked me up and down like I was a dusty handbag in a designer store. She shook my hand with 2 fingers and asked, "And what exactly do you do, Liam?" Not how I was doing, just what brand label I wore. When I said product design for a small firm, she smiled thinly and said, "Oh, so you draw things." Chloe squeezed my hand under the table. I just smiled through it. Over the years, I got used to Eleanor constantly mentioning Adam, Chloe's high school boyfriend. He was some golden boy finance bro who founded a startup in Research Triangle Park and supposedly made his first million by 28. Eleanor adored him. She once told Chloe, in front of me, "You two were just so perfect together." I still have that Christmas card he sent us. He looked so handsome. I bit my tongue. Chloe rolled her eyes. "Mom, that was over 10 years ago. Let it go." But Eleanor didn't let things go. She collected grudges and passive-aggressive comments like souvenirs. The little things added up. We'd bring a bottle of wine to a gathering, and Eleanor would coo, "Oh, how sweet." You brought a gift from Aldi. I'd try to talk to Daniel about sports, and he'd blink and ask, do people still watch football? And every time I tried to contribute to a conversation about work or politics, I'd get these condescending nods from Sarah like I was a kid trying to sit at the adult table. Chloe always defended me, but she was caught in the middle. She loved her family, and she loved me. Sometimes, those two worlds felt like continents drifting apart. Still, we made it work. We carved out a life for ourselves, weekend hikes, shared Spotify playlists, matching mugs so cheesy we hid them when guests came over. We weren't flashy. We were real. So, when our 5-year wedding anniversary came, I wanted to celebrate properly. I made a reservation at this quiet Italian spot we loved, the kind of place where the pasta tastes like someone's grandmother is whispering secrets to the dough. But when Chloe suggested we invite her family for dessert, she said, they really want to celebrate with us. I hesitated. I wasn't in the mood to be patronized over panna cotta. Still, I said yes. Because I loved her. Because maybe this time would be different. Because I still believed, deep down, I could win her family over, not with money, but with decency. I wore a blazer, made sure my shoes were clean, and practiced small talk in the car. For the first 40 minutes, it actually went okay. Eleanor complimented Chloe's dress. Arthur made eye contact. Sarah showed me a photo of Milo drooling on a watermelon slice and didn't follow it up with a lecture on organic baby food. For once, it was tolerable. Until the wine came out. One glass turned into 2. Eleanor's volume rose with each sip. The waitress brought out a tiny anniversary cake with 5 wonderful years, piped in chocolate, and everyone clapped. It was nice. I exhaled. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. And then, just as I was reaching for a bite of tiramisu, Eleanor leaned back, gave this theatrical little laugh, and said that sentence that would change everything. The one I started this story with. It's cute how you try so hard on that salary. My daughter could have married Adam, you know, the millionaire. Then she chuckled. Sarah did too. Even Daniel smiled into his drink. For a split second, the table was quiet except for the sound of my fork clinking back onto the plate. I looked across at Chloe. Her face had gone pale, her eyes wide. And that's when I said it. For words. Calm, steady, no yelling, no drama. But they made Eleanor freeze mid-laugh and drop her wine glass. It shattered, red wine spilling across the tablecloth like a crime scene. And all I had said were 4 words. I bought this place. That's it. No flourish, no grand announcement, just a quiet statement of fact. But those 4 words changed the entire atmosphere of the room. Sarah's smile vanished. Daniel stopped mid-sip. Arthur, for the first time that evening, looked genuinely interested. Eleanor's eyes flicked to mine wide, like she was trying to process whether I was joking or if her ears had betrayed her. Chloe stared at me, her hand frozen halfway to her water glass. Liam, she whispered, what do you mean? I leaned back in my chair, taking my napkin off my lap and setting it beside my untouched dessert. I bought this restaurant, I said, still calm. Last spring, quietly. I didn't think it was important to bring up, since apparently we're all very concerned with what people make. Eleanor blinked. You're joking. No, I replied. I'm not. And that was it. That was the exact moment the balance shifted. The moment years of snide remarks, backhanded compliments, and smug grins finally crumbled into stunned silence. But let me tell you something most people don't realize until it's too late. When entitled people feel their control slipping, they don't go quiet for long. They lash out. They double down. And they get nastier. The silence didn't last. Wait a second, Eleanor finally said, her voice sharp. You mean you own this place? As in what? You're the landlord. I smiled politely. No, Eleanor. I'm the owner. I bought out the original owners when they retired. I have a small team that manages day-to-day operations, but I make the decisions. But how? Sarah asked, like I'd told her I'd sprouted wings. You're just a product designer. Chloe said you were working at some design firm. I was, I said, but I left 2 years ago, started freelancing. I also made a few smart investments back in 2018. Tech stocks, crypto, some startup equity from an old job. Things did well. I kept things quiet because I don't really enjoy talking about money at family dinners. Daniel finally chimed in. You mean you've had money this whole time and never said anything? I didn't think it was relevant, I said. Apparently, my job title was enough to decide I wasn't worth listening to. The mood had curdled like milk in the sun. The server came by and froze when he saw the broken glass. I waved him off gently, said we'd handle it. He looked awkward and backed away. Eleanor, meanwhile, was still trying to reassemble her ego from the shattered pieces on the table. Chloe was quiet beside me. I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat. Her hand found mine under the table, and I squeezed it. Not out of triumph, but because I knew this moment, this exact moment, would shift everything for her too. Eleanor cleared her throat and gave a brittle little laugh. Well, that's surprising. I mean, good for you, Liam. Really. But I still think it's important to talk about these things. Transparency is part of being a family. I looked at her, and this time I didn't smile. Funny. You only wanted transparency when you thought I was beneath your daughter. She blinked, her mouth opened, but nothing came out. That dinner ended shortly after. The check was already paid, by me of course. But Eleanor insisted on leaving early, mumbling something about an early brunch. Daniel and Sarah followed like ducklings in her wake. Arthur nodded at me and muttered, "Nice place," before drifting out, invisible as always. Chloe and I sat there for another 10 minutes, the candle between us flickering like it was nervous. She didn't say anything at first. Then she sighed and looked at me. You bought this place and never told me. I looked back at her. I wasn't hiding it. I just didn't want to make it a thing. I know how your family is. I didn't want them to suddenly respect me because of money. She nodded slowly. I get that. I do. I wish I'd known. And I understood that. I did. But in my head, something had started to shift too. A quiet suspicion I hadn't been able to shake since the moment Eleanor brought up Adam for the 100th time. It wasn't just favoritism, it was sabotage. I didn't realize how deep it went until the next family gathering. 2 weeks later, we were at Eleanor's house for Milo's first birthday. It was one of those ridiculous suburban productions with a hired magician, a bounce house for babies, mind you, and little personalized gift bags that probably cost more than my childhood bike. Chloe had made cupcakes. I offered to help set up, but Eleanor told me, "Oh no, we've got it under control, Liam." Which was code for "stay out of the way, peasant." Fine. So, I helped carry some extra chairs in from the garage. That's where I overheard the conversation. Eleanor was in the kitchen with Sarah and Daniel. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was literally just passing through. But when I heard my name, I stopped. He's just doing this to prove a point, Eleanor was saying. You can't tell me he just happened to buy that restaurant. He's trying to embarrass us. I still don't understand how he had that kind of money, Sarah said. I mean, Chloe said they were budgeting for a vacation last year. Daniel scoffed. Probably hiding something. Guys like that don't just invest smart. He probably got lucky or inherited something and is trying to act like he's clever. I stood there, gripping the back of the folding chair like it might anchor me to the floor. Then Eleanor said the thing that snapped something inside me. Well, it's not too late for Chloe to realize she made a mistake. Adam still asks about her sometimes. And unlike Liam, he doesn't hide behind some modest lifestyle like a martyr. I backed away before they saw me. My ears were burning. My throat felt tight. It wasn't just disdain anymore. It was active manipulation. Eleanor didn't just dislike me, she was still holding out hope that Chloe would leave me. That night, I didn't bring it up. I didn't tell Chloe what I'd heard. I didn't want to ruin Milo's birthday. But inside, something had cracked, and the cracks only spread. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention. I noticed the subtle digs Eleanor kept slipping into conversations. It must be hard budgeting when you don't have dual incomes, she said once, not realizing I out-earned Daniel and Sarah combined. I caught Daniel trying to one-up me, name-dropping mutual funds and legal loopholes like he thought he was in a financial duel. Sarah started posting passive-aggressive quotes on Facebook like, "True love is transparent love, and some people hide their true selves until it's too late." Chloe stayed oblivious. Or maybe she was just tired. Every time I tried to bring up how her family treated me, she'd sigh and say, I know. I'm sorry. There. Just complicated. But one night, about a month later, things came to a head. We were at Eleanor's again for dinner. Chloe's cousin, Hannah, had just gotten engaged, and it was a whole thing. Champagne, toasts, gifts. Hannah's fiancé was some real estate guy with slicked back hair and the emotional depth of a garden hose. But Eleanor treated him like royalty. He owns 2 condos, she gushed at the table. And he's barely 30. That's ambition. Chloe squeezed my hand under the table. I let it go. Then, after dessert, Eleanor pulled Chloe aside. I stayed back, chatting with Arthur, who, to his credit, was trying to tell me a story about a boat trip from the 80s. But then I heard Chloe's voice. Sharp. Unusual for her. Are you serious, Mom? I turned. Chloe was standing in the hallway with her arms crossed. Eleanor looked unfazed. I'm just saying, honey, if you'd been honest about Liam's finances, we could have worked out something better for your future. This isn't how our family operates. Worked out something better? Chloe echoed. Are you hearing yourself? Eleanor's tone didn't change. It's not about love, darling. Love fades. Security doesn't. And frankly, I'm starting to think Liam is hiding something bigger. You deserve to know everything. I stepped into the hallway. Funny, I said. Because I seem to remember inviting you both to sign an NDA when I took over the restaurant and gave you access to our tasting events. You remember that, right, Eleanor? Her eyes widened. That was just paperwork. No, I said calmly. That was legal paperwork which you signed. And which means the next time you insinuate that I'm lying about finances, I can legally revoke your access to anything I own. Chloe looked at me in shock. Wait, what tasting events? I turned to her. We've been doing private dinners for charity, monthly, high-profile guests. I didn't bring it up because I wanted one part of my life not to be picked apart by her family. There was a long pause. Then Eleanor scoffed. See, he is hiding things. And that's when Chloe said it. She looked at her mother, then at me, then back at her mother, and she said, Mom, did you really invite Adam to our wedding? After we sent the guest list. Eleanor flinched. That silence told us everything. And, just like that, it all made sense. Chloe didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The way she asked the question, calm, direct, almost like she already knew the answer, landed heavier than a scream ever could. I watched Eleanor's perfectly done face twitch slightly, as if trying to hold together a crumbling mask. You're being ridiculous, Eleanor finally muttered, looking away. It was just a courtesy. Adam sent flowers when he heard about the wedding. I thought it would be polite to include him. That's all. That's all. Chloe said, arms crossed. After everything, you tried to sneak my ex into our wedding like it was your high school reunion? I didn't sneak anyone. Eleanor snapped. He RSVP'd. Nothing even happened. But you wanted it to, didn't you? Chloe said, her voice cracking just a little. You wanted him there at my wedding, sitting in a chair that should have gone to someone who actually cared about us. The room had gone quiet. Arthur had stopped halfway through pouring himself another scotch. Even Sarah looked like she wasn't quite sure where to stand. Daniel had conveniently wandered off to check his phone in the guest bathroom. I've always wanted what's best for you, Eleanor said, lifting her chin. No, Chloe said, you've always wanted what made you look good, and Liam never fit that picture. I was still standing in the hallway, stunned. Not because I didn't know Eleanor was capable of this. Honestly, a part of me had suspected for years, but because Chloe was finally seeing it. Not brushing it off. Not excusing it. Seeing it raw and in front of her for what it really was. We didn't stay long after that. Chloe grabbed her coat without another word. Eleanor tried to guilt-trip her on the way out. You're going to abandon your own mother over this? But the words didn't land like they used to. Chloe didn't speak the whole drive home, and I didn't push. I just drove quietly, letting the night wrap itself around us, cold and sharp like the first breath of winter. When we got home, she sat on the couch in silence for a long time. I made us tea. She didn't drink hers. Finally, she said, I feel like I've been blind. I sat beside her. You weren't. You just wanted to believe the best. I defended her for years, she said. Even when I saw the signs, even when you tried to tell me, I thought it was easier to keep the peace. I thought that's what family did. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought too. She turned to me, eyes glassy. Liam, I'm sorry for letting it get this far. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do, she interrupted. Because you've been carrying this weight alone. I saw the little comments, the favoritism, the comparisons, and I told myself it wasn't a big deal, but it was. And it hurt you. And I didn't protect you. I should have. I didn't respond right away because there wasn't anything to say. She was right. And the truth is, I had been hurt. I'd just gotten good at hiding it, laughing it off, biting my tongue until it bled. I told myself I was being the bigger person, but in reality, I was just shrinking myself down to fit into a family that never wanted me there in the first place. That night, we decided to take some space, not from each other, but from them. We stopped going to every Sunday dinner, stopped replying to Eleanor's, just checking in texts that always came with strings attached. Chloe started saying no more often. I started breathing deeper. It was liberating for a while. But here's the thing about family toxicity, it doesn't go away quietly. Over the next few months, Eleanor escalated. It started subtly. Passive-aggressive comments on Facebook about daughters who forget their roots, photos of Sarah and Daniel's family dinners with captions like, "True family always shows up." Then it got more direct. Calls to Chloe's office under the guise of urgent family matters that turned out to be rants about how she was letting me isolate her, or how marriage is supposed to be a partnership with your parents, too. Then came the final straw. Chloe and I had finally booked our dream vacation, a quiet 2-week trip to Greece, something we'd been putting off for years. We planned every detail. I cleared my freelance schedule, and Chloe submitted time off for the first time in over a year. It was supposed to be ours. 2 days before the trip, Chloe got a voicemail from Sarah. "She's in the hospital," Sarah said, crying. "It's Mom." She collapsed in the kitchen. "They think it's her heart." We panicked. Chloe broke down in tears. I called the airline. We canceled everything. Bags still half-packed on the bed. We jumped in the car and drove to the hospital, running every red light on the way. When we arrived, out of breath, frantic, we found Eleanor sitting upright in bed, eating a cup of Jell-O and arguing with a nurse about the room temperature. Turns out, it wasn't her heart. It was a dizzy spell. Mild dehydration. She was cleared for discharge that same night. And the worst part? She smiled when she saw us. A smug little smile. "Oh, good," she said. "You came." Chloe stood frozen. "You lied." "I didn't lie," Eleanor said. Sarah overreacted. "I just told her I felt faint. You know how she is. But it's lovely that you came. It shows where your priorities still are." I walked out of that room before I said something I'd regret. Chloe followed a few minutes later, pale and silent. We sat in the car for a long time. "I gave up our vacation for this," she whispered. She manipulated me. I didn't say anything. I just held her hand. That was rock bottom. The moment we realized we could never go back to who we were before, that our kindness would always be weaponized, that playing nice only gave them more ammo. That night, we made a decision. We would stop reacting and start building. We quietly cut ties. No more explanations, no more polite justifications, no announcements on social media, just silence. We changed our numbers. Chloe blocked her mother and sister. We moved her work email to a protected contact list. We told our closest friends and allies the truth, not the dramatized version Eleanor spun, but the quiet, honest facts. And then we started over. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. There was no montage, just small, steady steps. Chloe started therapy. She'd never done it before, always thought she didn't need it. But she found a counselor who specialized in family trauma and began unpacking years of internalized guilt, perfectionism, and emotional gaslighting. Week by week, I saw her stand taller, smile more, laugh like she used to. I threw myself into work, not to escape, but to create. I expanded the restaurant. We opened a small upstairs lounge with live jazz on weekends. I partnered with a local charity to host monthly fundraisers. I hired young chefs with talent but no connections, people who reminded me of myself. And I started saying yes to interviews, podcasts, local business panels. For the first time, I let people know who I was. Not for vanity, but because I was done hiding. 6 months later, Chloe launched her own project. She left her marketing job and opened a boutique creative agency. Just 2 clients to start, then 5, then 10. She worked from home at first, then moved into a shared office space. I watched her rediscover her spark. We were no longer surviving. We were rising. And here's the thing, they noticed. Eleanor didn't stay quiet for long. She sent a long email months later, half apology, half guilt trip, talking about how family is all we have in the end, and how she just wanted the best for her daughters. Chloe didn't respond. Sarah tried next. She showed up at our restaurant during lunch service with Milo in tow, hoping the kids' presence would soften us. I told her politely that I couldn't chat during rush hour. Daniel emailed a cease and desist after he saw that Chloe was using a marketing strategy that looked suspiciously similar to something his firm once pitched to a client. We laughed and forwarded it to our lawyer. It was messy, but it was ours. We were no longer living in their shadow. We were building something brighter. And yet, the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because one day, out of nowhere, a legal envelope landed on our doorstep, addressed to Chloe from Eleanor's estate planner. That's when everything took a sharp left turn. And what we discovered inside that envelope changed everything. Chloe stood in the doorway, holding the envelope like it was radioactive. She hadn't opened it yet. It had arrived in an unmarked legal courier envelope with only one return address, North Creek Estate and Trust Management. No note, no explanation, just her name on the label in crisp, clean font, and the faint scent of overpaid legal drama clinging to the seal. She turned to me with a look I hadn't seen on her face in a long time. Not fear, not sadness, not anger even. It was something colder, sharper. Curiosity laced with caution. "I don't know what this is," she said, walking into the kitchen. "But I already hate it." I dried my hands on a towel and nodded toward the letter opener. "Want me to do it?" She hesitated, then handed it to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper, heavy stock, thick enough to feel serious. The heading was short: Notice of Intent to Amend Living Trust, Eleanor M. Whitmore. Chloe read it once, then again slower, and then she burst out laughing. But it wasn't the good kind of laugh. It was the kind you let out when the absurdity of something slams into your chest so hard you forget how to breathe. "She's revoking my beneficiary status," Chloe said, shaking her head. "This woman is actually writing me out of her trust." I blinked. "Wait, you were in her trust?" Chloe sighed and sat down. "Yeah, ages ago, when Dad had that health scare, Mom redid all the estate planning. She put Sarah and me in as 50-50 beneficiaries. I haven't thought about it in years." "Why no?" I asked. "What's the timing here?" Chloe held up the notice. "It says she's reconsidering the distribution of her assets due to recent familial estrangement and poor judgment exhibited by her youngest daughter in the selection of a life partner." My jaw clenched. "So, this is because she didn't get her way." "Oh," Chloe said, reaching into the envelope again. "It gets better." There was a second page, a revised draft of Eleanor's trust structure, Sarah 90% beneficiary, Milo 10%, Chloe removed entirely. At the bottom, there was a handwritten postscript, one line: "This doesn't have to be permanent, darling. But some choices have consequences." Chloe stared at it for a long time. I expected tears, or yelling, or at the very least, a drink. But she did something else entirely. She folded the letter back up neatly, carefully, slid it into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer next to our sink. Then she turned to me and said, "She just gave me the perfect out." From that moment on, everything shifted. Chloe had always been composed, organized, methodical. But something about that letter awakened a part of her I'd never seen before. Not rage, not revenge in the screaming soap opera sense. No, it was clarity. The kind of quiet, patient resolve that doesn't just wait for karma. It builds it, brick by brick. "She wants to cut me out," she said that night, pacing in the living room. "Fine. But I want to know why. I want to see everything she's been hiding." What she gave Sarah. What she promised Daniel. What leverage she's been holding over us this entire time. So, you want to fight it? I asked. No, Chloe said, stopping mid-step. I want to understand it. Then I want to expose it. That was the beginning of the setup. Step 1. Knowledge. We hired a trust and estate attorney, someone who specialized in family estate conflicts. His name was Julian, and he looked like he'd walked out of a courtroom drama on primetime television. Silver hair, razor-sharp posture, a voice like silk on steel. He reviewed the trust amendment and said, "This was meant to provoke you. It's a power play, but it also opens doors." She made it official. That gives us rights. Rights to what? Chloe asked. Discovery, Julian replied. If she's made you a formal beneficiary in the past and is now revising the trust with cause, we can request access to previous documents. We can also examine asset distribution patterns, family gifts, and disbursements to other beneficiaries. That means Sarah. That means Daniel. Chloe's eyes narrowed. We'll need proof. Don't worry, Julian said, leaning back. Entitled people always leave a trail. Over the next 6 weeks, we built our case. Sarah had always lived a lifestyle a few tiers above her pay grade. She worked part-time at a nonprofit, and Daniel's firm was successful, but not European vacation every 3 months, matching luxury cars in the driveway successful. Turns out, Eleanor had been funneling money to them for years, quietly, through early inheritance disbursements, educational gifts for Milo, and family equity transfers. And while Chloe had received the occasional birthday check or holiday sweater, Sarah had received $150,000 toward their down payment, a $25,000 wedding bonus, $60,000 in investment capital for Daniel's firm, and multiple emergency transfers totaling over $80,000 over the last 3 years. All of this came to light through Julian's discovery filings and a financial forensics specialist he brought on board. And that was just the money. We also learned that Eleanor had added Sarah and Daniel as medical and financial power of attorney for her estate without ever consulting Chloe. The implication was clear. Eleanor had been preparing to erase Chloe for a long time. But the real revelation came from an email, a single foolishly forwarded message Eleanor had sent to her estate manager. I need to know if we can remove Chloe entirely and reroute her portion through Milo. That way, I'm not cutting her off completely, and it'll look more fair on paper. I want to keep the family image intact for now. That was it. The mask had slipped. She didn't just want to punish Chloe. She wanted to stage manage the punishment. Chloe sat at the kitchen island, holding the printed email. A flicker of something unreadable on her face. She doesn't just hate you, she whispered. She resents me for not hating you too. I swallowed. So, what do we do? She looked at me, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw her smile with absolute, unapologetic intent. We let her finish building the gallows, she said, and then we pull the trapdoor ourselves. Step 2, control. I reached out to one of my investors, Ethan, a tech entrepreneur turned angel backer I'd partnered with years ago. He owed me a favor. When I told him what we were planning, he laughed. You want to go full succession on your in-laws? He asked. Not exactly, I said. But I need to make them see the power they've been dismissing. Ethan connected me with a private venue he co-owned, an exclusive estate in Newport used for high-profile retreats and charity events. Whitewashed stone walls, ivy-covered terraces, and a catering staff that made you weep into your truffle risotto. We booked it under a generic name, Whitmore Family Foundation Gala. Step 3, debate. Chloe reached out to Sarah under a burner email account, claimed to be a publicist working with the foundation's charitable wing. She invited Sarah and Daniel to a private family feature opportunity for an upcoming philanthropic spotlight series. Said they'd be honored at the event for their ongoing service to the community. Eleanor got her own invitation, printed and hand-delivered, with a note that said, because every family deserves to be seen for who they truly are. They all RSVP'd yes within 48 hours. Sarah posted about it on Instagram the next day, a filtered photo of her holding the invite next to a bottle of wine, captioned, "Family always rises to the top." Step 4, the stage. While they were busy preparing speeches and outfit changes, We were preparing documents. Every financial transfer, every manipulative message, every proof of favoritism, betrayal, coercion, and gaslighting. All printed, bound, and slipped into discreet envelopes labeled with their names. We worked with the event staff to time everything perfectly. Arrival cocktails, a private family honoring ceremony, a brief closed-door moment for media materials review. That's when they'd each receive their envelope. That's when the room would change. And that's when Chloe would stand at the front and take back the narrative. Not with vengeance, not with fury, but with truth. We weren't going to burn the bridge. We were going to make sure everyone saw who set the fire. The night of the gala arrived cloaked in elegance. The estate we'd rented shimmered in soft amber light, with violinists playing near the fountain and staff in crisp black uniforms guiding guests toward the arched entry. You wouldn't have guessed that behind the charm and catering, revenge was about to be served. Cold, meticulous, and years in the making. Sarah showed up first, draped in a pearl-studded gown that probably cost more than my car's down payment. Daniel had that same smug grin he always wore when he thought he was the smartest guy in the room. They were followed closely by Eleanor, decked out in a tailored navy dress and diamond earrings that glinted like ice under the chandelier light. She was glowing with self-importance, clearly thinking this event was a tribute to her legacy as matriarch. None of them suspected a thing. Their names were on the guest list. Their photos were in the mock-up program. They'd even received a framed honorary certificate at check-in with gold lettering and their names etched beneath a quote about the power of family-driven philanthropy. They mingled, they drank, they posed for photos. And then the event host stepped up to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening for the Whitmore Family Foundation Gala. Before our public program begins, we'll be holding a brief private segment with the family in the Orchid Room. We ask that the Whitmore family members follow staff for this exclusive media preparation." They followed, smiling, oblivious. Inside the Orchid Room, soft jazz played in the background and champagne waited on a tray. Chloe stood by the fireplace, calm and poised in a black dress, minimal jewelry, hair pinned up like a queen preparing for court. On the mahogany table beside her sat 3 sealed envelopes labeled clearly, Eleanor, Sarah, Daniel. Eleanor raised a sculpted brow. "What's all this?" Chloe gestured toward the chairs. "Please take a seat." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Where's the film crew?" Chloe looked him in the eye. "There is no film crew. There's no magazine. There's no charitable profile." Sarah's face went pale. "Then what is this?" Chloe reached for the remote and turned off the music. The silence that followed was the kind that amplifies everything. The creak of a chair, the shuffle of fabric, the pounding of your own heart. Then she spoke. "This isn't about honoring our family. This is about telling the truth. About years of manipulation, gaslighting, and favoritism. About how this family treats people like investments instead of human beings. About how you tried to punish me for choosing a partner who didn't meet your warped standards." Eleanor folded her arms. "I don't have time for this performance." "You don't need time," Chloe said coolly. "You need to open your envelope." She handed them out, one by one. They hesitated, but curiosity always wins with people like them. Inside were the documents Julian had compiled. Spreadsheets showing every financial disbursement from Eleanor's accounts to Sarah and Daniel, totals well over $300,000. Bank records. The email Eleanor had sent about rerouting Chloe's inheritance through Milo to keep up appearances. Handwritten notes between Eleanor and her estate planner about omitting Chloe as a co-trustee until she comes to her senses. But that wasn't the real bomb. The final sheet in each envelope was a notarized statement of withdrawal, Chloe's formal legal relinquishment of any future inheritance from Eleanor's estate, signed, sealed, and witnessed. Eleanor's hands trembled as she read the last line. "I voluntarily and permanently waive my right to any assets, property, or claims tied to the Whitmore family estate." She looked up. "What is this?" Chloe didn't flinch. "Freedom. You're just giving it up?" Sarah sputtered. "After everything, that money was half yours." "It was never mine," Chloe said. "Because it came with chains, expectations, control." "And I'm done." Daniel laughed. "You're bluffing." Chloe turned to him. Check with your attorney. The withdrawal was filed last week. Sarah looked furious. So what? You throw this tantrum and walk away. You think this makes you look noble. Chloe tilted her head. No, but that's not the end of it. I stepped forward from the corner where I'd been quiet until now. Eleanor's eyes darted to me like she'd just remembered I existed. Do you remember the charity gala you hosted back in 2019? I asked her. The one where you bragged about raising 6 figures for underprivileged youth? Eleanor blinked. Yes, of course. I handed her another envelope. This is the breakdown of the actual donations made that year. Less than $8,000 went to charity. The rest went to administrative fees to Daniel's consulting firm. Daniel's face drained of color. That's privileged information. No, I interrupted. It's public because I bought the holding company that handled your bookkeeping software last month legally. And I found a lot of discrepancies. Chloe stepped beside me. You funneled funds from a charity event to pay your own son-in-law. Then you framed it as philanthropy. Sarah stood up. This is insane. You can't just ruin our reputations over some bitterness. No one's ruining anything, I said. We're just letting the truth stand where your lies used to. Chloe held up a small USB drive. This contains everything. The documents, the transfers, the emails. It's not going to the press. Not unless you try to retaliate. But understand this. We're not afraid of you anymore. Eleanor slowly sat down. Her face had gone stone still. No rage, no denial, just a quiet realization that the game was over. You'll regret this, she said, her voice thin. Chloe smiled. I already regretted staying quiet for so long. But this? No, this is the first thing I don't regret in years. They left soon after, barely able to make eye contact. Sarah didn't post a single photo from that night. Daniel's firm quietly removed its Philanthropic Partnerships tab from their website. Within a week, Eleanor went dark on social media. And us? We didn't gloat. We didn't brag. We just lived. Chloe went on to expand her agency, partnering with nonprofits and ethical companies, real ones. I opened a second restaurant, this time a bakery cafe in the heart of the city, dedicated to my mother's favorite recipes. We named it Orchid after the room where we took back control. Sometimes I still get looks from people who know the story, business owners, family friends who caught wind of what happened. They ask me if I'd do it all again. And I always say the same thing, I never wanted revenge. I just wanted peace. But sometimes, to get peace, you have to end the war yourself. And that night, we ended it forever. What would you have done in our shoes?